Hello and greetings to everybody. Welcome to episode 83 of the Westmarch Workshop. Leviathan swims solo. Yes, it is just me tonight. I am so sorry that you will have to suffer through this. Sorry, not sorry, of course. My good friend Nineball unfortunately can't be with us because he is a bit under the weather. It's happening to all of us now, so go figure. It's his turn to finally get under the cold aspect of things. I know some of you guys probably saw that he had a tweet about going to the hospital, ER kind of stuff. He just wasn't really feeling good and wasn't sure, so went and got himself checked out. No real synopsis, unfortunately, but he is doing well. I want everybody to at least know that right off the bat that he is doing fine. He will be back with us again next week, so do not fear. Just tonight, he kind of has a cough thing going on, so he didn't want to come and cough in your ears for 2 hours straight. And I don't blame him. I also didn't want to hear it either, so thanks for that, Nineball. But without further ado, we're going to hop into the show here. I actually might just leave this music in the background for a little bit to leave me some company. Turn it up a little. So it's just me, guys. Hopefully everyone's doing well tonight. Thank you for joining me here. For those of you live in the chat, much appreciate you guys keeping me company. For those of you listening, iTunes, Stitcher, and all the other ways and media that you guys find us, thank you so much for continuing to support the show. It's March. It's March 2016, almost at 15. And what that means is that we're actually coming up on the anniversary of Reaper of Souls. So in a couple of weeks, I guess not a couple, maybe 3 weeks or so, because math is hard, we'll be seeing if there's any sweet little anniversary type of event that goes on in Sanctuary. But, spoiler for the news section, we do have an event right now that's going on, and it's pretty cool. So stay tuned for that. But like we always do, I'll go ahead and give you guys my spiel for the beginning of the show, and that's what my week in gaming was. So since we last met, I haven't actually done too much in the game. I fully assimilated my Crusader over to the Legacy of Nightmares bombardment setup. I did, and I know it's one of those things where if you watched my stream or you just kind of heard me every now and again on this show talk about how I'm so resistant to play it just because it doesn't quite feel as immersive as many of the other like Crusader playstyles. You kind of wait around quite a bit, you do some herding and things, and then once your physical portion of the conventional elements pops, that's when you just spam all the buttons. You know, there's like a rotation to it. It's turning out to be a little better to play than I first imagined or was watching from afar, so it's definitely one of those walk a mile in the shoes before you trash the shoes or whatever. So I'm liking aspects of it, but in general it kind of is playing out to be what I thought it would. But in any case, it is a super powerful build, so by all means, if you're playing Crusader this season, I highly recommend eventually trying to get yourself into it. It obviously has a bit of some gearing requirements with all the ancient pieces that are necessary, but I cleared a GR80 on hardcore relatively easily. It was my first key that I used on a GR80. I actually got a really good map. I got the Silver Spires, 2 floors of it in a row, and some really decent pylons, so it wasn't too shabby. But I definitely feel like I can climb higher, so keep tuning in for more updates on where I take my Greater Rift clears until this season is over. We're more than halfway through now. 6 weeks passed, I believe, last Friday, so if they're going to hold to that kind of 3-month, 12-week cycle of the season, then we should be seeing some news relatively soon about the end of the season and maybe some PTR. And let's just hop right into the news section with that lead-in, because we got a little bit of an announcement today. An announcement of an announcement, perhaps. We got a quick chat about the next PTR patch, and that came in from Kauza. Before the show started, we were debating how to exactly pronounce community manager Kauza's name, and so we don't even have clarification, so I'm just going to keep saying it, and if I'm butchering it, then I'm butchering it, so be it. But he mentioned that they've been hard at work on 2.4.1, and official PTR patch notes are coming soon. TM, of course. So you guys can look forward to that. I was talking to Nineball before the show started, and Kaza is giving me grief. I'm just gonna try saying it a bunch of different ways until I hear the ding ding. He's giving me grief in chat because I pronounced it incorrectly. Kaza. Nineball's also in chat too, by the way. So shout outs to Nineball. He told me? I missed it. Oh gosh, I'm the worst. I'm so bad. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. But not to derail from this amazing, exciting news, but the 2.4.1 PTR patch should be coming live pretty soon. I was talking to Nineball before the show started, and we were thinking maybe next week, even. Just something like this, a post that's kind of coming ahead of a potential rollout of the PTR patch seems to suggest it's definitely not too far off the horizon, because Blizzard tends to not say anything about forthcoming changes or upgrades or new patches until they're like very close. So if anything, we're thinking probably next Tuesday or so. But definitely stay tuned for that. Probably by the next show, we'll be talking about all the exciting things in the new PTR. But there are a couple of changes they wanted to forewarn us about, and they mostly have to do with the group meta. If you've been paying attention or watching streams or anything of that sort, you know by this point that it's really a wizard showcase with 3 supports: the barbarian, the witch doctor, and the monk, and they're all just generating health globes like mad. And the barb in particular is a huge part of the support for that, because they're able to do ignore pain with mob rule, which just gives a flat 50% damage reduction to the entire party, and then when you combine that with the Pride of Cassius, you have 100% uptime on it. So it's pretty insane and pretty mandatory. And what they're going to do in this coming PTR patch is bump that 50% reduction down to 25%. So you can still have the 100% uptime, it just won't be quite as effective as it used to be. And what they're trying to do with this is make sure that barbs don't need to always be there. You can kind of have more diversity within your group party. But the other side to that is they don't want to harm the overall viability of the group play, so they're also reducing the damage of monsters at high greater rifts. We don't know the exact specifics on what numbers or whatnot. I'm sure we'll be able to test it out once PTR goes live and see how it feels, make some adjustments from there. But hopefully the idea is that we'll still be able to be in the same tiers of greater rifts, so that groups are clearing 100 plus right now. Hopefully the idea is that with this change to mob rule, we still will be able to go into those high tiers of GRs, but you might actually see some different classes in there, or ignore pain might still be there, but it won't be so dependent on it. You'll be okay to actually have it drop off and not potentially die. Also, there's one in the middle here, but I'll skip that real quick just to keep talking about party stuff. And so, of course, one of the other sides of the meta as well is this Twisted Sword that just props up Energy Twister for wizards to the nth degree. The more Energy Twisters that they can spam out, the more damage their Energy Twisters do. So, it was kind of insane. The whole idea was that they just really pressed one button throughout the entire Greater Rift, and so they're going to change that up by making the Twisted Sword's legendary power cap at 5 Energy Twisters. And the other side of that, of course, was feeding as many health globes as you could to the wizard, and through Reaper's Wraps they would have enough arcane power to sustain just spamming out a ton of Energy Twisters. So they're also making adjustments to the other side of that, because Selenium was the weapon of choice to pump out all those health globes, and they're adding an internal cooldown to Selenium of 8 seconds. I already saw some people kind of chiming in on this, saying, oh gosh, is this going to wreck just the use of Selenium in general? What about builds that were using it that weren't necessarily involved in its meta? Like some people are saying witch doctors might use it because they have some reliance on health globes as well. So we'll see what the adjustments are. Someone was even saying up the % chance for the health globe spawn then to combat the internal cooldown. So now it ranges 3 to 4% chance to spawn a health globe. Maybe it goes to 10 or something like that. We'll see. And then last but not least, the Taeguk is getting a change as well. This was one that we talked about last show, where Wyatt had a couple of things that he was mentioning here and there about potential ways to change it, how they could make it feel better for channeling skills, which is what it was originally invented for. And so they're actually going to go forward with some of those changes in this new 2.4.1 PTR. Taeguk will only work for channeled powers, so that's going to be, again, like we were saying before, your Strafe, your Whirlwind, your Rapid Fire, other channeled skills. And so what will also change with Taeguk is that it will stack more quickly, but it's going to drop off more quickly as well. So now the maximum will be 10 stacks, but you'll lose the stack after 1.5 seconds instead of the 3 seconds that we see on live right now. And then lastly, the armor percent component of Taeguk is being changed to 2% per stack. And I believe it was 0.5% as of right now. I should have checked on that before we started, but so be it. But that's going up. So the idea is that Taeguk is going to complement the moments when you're channeling and you need the extra boost. You probably won't have Taeguk up all the time, but it won't hurt as much when your stacks fall off, and you'll build them up more quickly. Armor percent reduction will affect survivability, but the reduced monster damage at the higher grade of rifts should also help to balance that out as well. I'm just reading from the post here. And they're going to have a lot more to share on changes to other gems, get hyped for that, which will help to make as many gems as possible work as reasonable substitutes for Taeguk. So it looks like we're going to get a big legendary gem overhaul in patch 2.4.1, so that's actually super exciting. Really looking forward to this one. It is a 0.1 patch, so it's probably going to be smaller than what we're used to from like a full-fledged 2.3, 2.4. But it does seem like there will be some interesting things in there for sure. And someone actually tweeted at John Yang earlier tonight and was just saying, hey, what about class balance or like set balance? Are you guys going to do anything about that? And there were no promises in his tweet, but he at least said like we're always looking at balancing class sets and making sure that they all feel in good line for builds being even with each other and things like that. So there could also be some class set reworks into patch 2.4.1 as well. Stay tuned for more info on that. I'm very excited. Something else that I was hinting at before was an interesting little thing that was going around the internet. A bunch of the fan sites picked up the fact that the Blizzard career page was updated for 3 positions for Diablo on an unannounced project. Let that sink in for a second. So there's this senior character artist, a senior concept artist, and a lighting artist, and all 3 of these positions are for an unannounced project. I'll read the beginning for the lighting artist because this one was the most interesting to me. It says Blizzard Entertainment is seeking an exceptionally skilled and passionate lighting artist to craft the mood and drama surrounding new characters and never before seen worlds, plural, in our next hit game. We're looking for artists who demonstrate a strong understanding of light, shadow, and color to set the tone of an environment as well as guide the player. Blah blah blah, but the ideal candidate shares their sensibilities and looks forward to the challenging of illuminating the dark medieval worlds of Diablo. So this is something where people are starting to speculate again, expansion or full-fledged new game. I think Nineball and I both fall on the side of brand new game. I think this is D4, guys, and I'm kind of crazy to know more about what's going on here. This is obviously still very, very early on because we're talking about like concepts, getting the initial world fledged out. So we don't know much, and Nineball even suggests that we won't even hear like official announcements of any sort of inkling of a game until something like 2019 or so. If you're more of an optimist, maybe less of a realist, then you might think, hey, maybe we'll hear something at BlizzCon or 2016, who knows? But this is definitely something that's getting a lot of people speculating, which is cool. So if you have any potential thoughts, or you ordained in your tea leaves as you were drinking some delicious green tea that the game is gonna release next year, and you have all the ideas and clues and everything, definitely feel free to email us and let us know what you know. But there's definitely a lot of speculation to be had here. And one of the things Nineball wanted to key in on too was this idea of worlds, multiple. So does this mean like heaven and hell? Does this mean sanctuary and other places that we can go? I'm sure Nineball is going to want to lore all over this the next time he's on the show. So I don't know. This combined with the whole post that we had seen previously for, I believe it was like a lead senior artist or lead concept artist, or I don't remember all the titles. Art director, I think it was an art director position, unannounced project before a few months ago. I don't know, it's all seeming to lead towards a new game if you ask me, so I am stoked. D4, maybe. Replay in chat says he's already ready for the D4 beta. Why did I say beta? Make it better. Butter is better. So yeah, that's another thing that we're definitely keeping our eye on. So that was another news piece I want to update you with. Another thing that came through this week as well was all the BlizzCon Lightning Talks are now on the YouTube channel for Diablo. So the BlizzCon 2015, one of the highlights from there that we keep mentioning was the Slaughtered Calf Inn, and within the Slaughtered Calf Inn, there are a bunch of little 10-minute talks or so that many of the developers, artists, people involved with making the game as great as it is today, went up on stage and gave some, sermons, behind the scenes looks, just insight into the creation process behind, the Ring of Rogrander, a bunch of different legendaries, treasure goblins, yetis, the making of Grey Hollow Island, the making of the monsters in Grey Hollow Island. So all sorts of really cool and interesting things. Nevelistis has a post that's on the official Diablo 3 site. So if you want to check out, there's a playlist that they've created so you can just go from start to finish. The last one that just came out, I actually want to point to real quick, was Designing Better Goblins. And this one's with Alex Solman. And he was talking about just how they went from having originally, one type of treasure goblin, even though there were different versions of it in the game, just for aesthetics only. He kind of took that idea further and was like, what if it just dropped only blood shards? What if it just dropped only materials? And that's kind of how we got our our blood thief and our I can't even, I'm blanking on the names. This is where I need my man Nineball to back me up. But like Gelatinous Sire, Gilded Baron, all the treasure goblins we've come to know and love now made it through this kind of iterative process on just imagining how cool treasure goblins could really be if they fleshed out kind of their species a little bit more. But some of the really interesting things were the fact that Magic Find shrines became the Bandit Shrine. I don't know if anyone just, maybe I'm slow, but I, click on all the different shrines, and so there's Protection, there's Empowered, Fleeting, all the different ones that are there, but I just never happened to notice that Magic Find wasn't showing up anymore, and it turned into the Bandit Shrine. So that's pretty cool. But one thing you may not know is that the Bandit Shrine actually scales with players in your game, and this came out of the Lightning Talk. So that means that if you have 2, 3, 4 players in your game, you're actually going to get more treasure goblins to spawn from that one Bandit Shrine. So whenever you run across one, it's always worth your time to kind of fill up the game and have as many people in there as possible, because you can get, I think you said upwards 19 treasure goblins for a 4-player game. And that's kind of the wrap on that. So definitely check those out. Really fun. And if you weren't able to go to BlizzCon, they really do give you some of the feel of what was going on in that Slaughtered Calf Inn. I have here also a video from Jhow. He released a video of the top 10 solo Greater Rift builds that we've seen in Season 5 and Patch 2.4. I actually put up an article on the BlizzPro website to kind of highlight this, just because I thought it was cool, because every single class has a build in this top 10, which is awesome. And the Demon Hunter, I think, featured the most with 3 or maybe 4. And someone was mentioning there's a Legacy of Nightmares Fan of Knives build that's missing from the video as well. So DH is just absolutely killing it in terms of viability with all their different sets and builds for solo GRs. Which is really funny because they feature nowhere in the group meta besides some of the people that are really trying to push the support DH forward. It's just kind of funny that they are absolutely dominating all their own boards, I should say, because they're not at the top of the highest GRs being cleared, but just within their own boards there's so much diversity, which is great. But I highly recommend checking out that article and that video. It's really cool. And I'm also mentioning it too because I got a little spotlight in there for the Legacy of Nightmare Bombardment stuff, which is kind of nice. Even though I just started playing it, but so be it. Like I did mention though, it is very powerful, and I actually have been keeping tabs on the top hardcore, at least in the Americas, Crusader, and he is running, of course, the Legacy of Nightmares Bombardment, and he just cleared an 88. So it's going to be insane, dude. People are going to be clearing GR 90 in hardcore pretty soon, which is just crazy to think. Crazy to think. A couple more news items here as well. Nevelistis, again, popped up in the forums, and there were a bunch of people that were talking about the Stone of Jordan. And just wondering, when is it going to get its new comeback to the scene? When is it going to get a power? How do we make it better? Should it even be better? And right now, some of the wizards are actually using it in those 4-player parties just to put out more DPS because they are the DPS of the group. So whatever they can do to pump it out, they are. So they're using the endless walk set, which of course frees up a ring slot since it's not focus and restraint oriented. So you have your amulet in your one ring for the endless walk, and then that other ring is free. So they're going Stone of Jordan on the free ring, and then in the cube they're going Convention of Elements. So the Stone of Jordan is being used, but Nevelistus just kind of came out and said like, let's think about this. I've seen some feedback, people wanting to see Stone of Jordan get some revivification, which is an awesome word. So let's explore the concept. If we revise the Stone of Jordan, what would you want it to do? Why do you want Stone of Jordan to be important? Is it for nostalgia purposes, or do you want it to be more competitive and varied with the ring options? Is there another reason? Would you rather see the Stone of Jordan have a new Kanai/crafting use, be spent as currency, which is a total callback to D2, or just feel more competitive as an item? How can we revise the Stone of Jordan in a way that's great for everyone and not just a single class? And I want to actually throw this idea out to you workshoppers as well too. You guys are always really good at coming up with cool and interesting ideas for stuff in the game. So take on Nevelistus' challenge. You can go to the official forums and kind of read this post again. But if you got everything that I just mentioned, go ahead and write us here at the show, westmarchworkshop@blizzpro.com, and let us know what some of your ideas are for the Stone of Jordan. I'd love to hear if you think it shouldn't be touched at all, if you think that you have a crazy rework for it. I actually saw a couple of really interesting things where it was like, I mean, they make it super broken, but like it was like, give it a legendary power where it opens up another passive for you, or give it a legendary power where it opens up a 7th skill for you. I was like, oh my gosh, that's obviously pushing it like a little too far. But I mean, if you're just spitballing, you're just spitballing, right? So throw it out there, see what sticks to the wall. Next up, people noticed yesterday that there was a little something going on with the Immortal Throne Room in the Ruins of Sescheron. And it's now the month of March, like I mentioned at the outset of the show. And back in the day when they introduced, I believe it was patch 2.3, when they introduced the Ruins of Sescheron and Kanai's Cube, people would stop by the throne room and notice that this message kept coming up that's saying it is not time yet, or the event is not ready yet, or it's something to the effect of like there's something coming here, but now is not the time for it. And it turns out that March is the time. So if you go in the game right now live, go to the Immortal Throne Room, hang out with Kanai, and a portal opens up to Kanai's stomping grounds. This is a cool little Easter egg that's in the game now, and it's to celebrate the birth month of Kevin Kanai Griffith, who you guys know the Kanai's Cube was named after, and there was actually a really nice kind of retrospective on some of the development that went into Kanai's Cube and why it's called what it's called, and how it's kind of an homage to Kevin Kanai Griffith, who was a Blizzard employee that unfortunately passed away in 2014 due to a rare form of cancer. So this is again just another thing to kind of push along the spirit of him being in the game, and now you can actually play with his barbarian alongside you. He goes and he like whirlwinds and does some AoE effects and things like that. So it's actually a pretty fun time. You just hop in there, you kill a couple of cows, and then you go about your day. So it's a good way to kind of start things off if you want to hang out with good old Kanai. Definitely check that out. I did a video on it. I'll probably try and post up an article to BlizzPro for it as well too. But if you check out like Reddit and things, there's people who are talking about it. And Nevelistus did chime in here and just said that the Kanai event has been present since patch 2.4.0 launch, but it's only available during March, and that's the real world birth month of Kevin Kanai Griffith, the artist for whom Kanai's Cube and King Kanai is named. And then she goes on to explain some of the things I just explained to you guys as well. So really cool stuff, a really nice tribute continuing for Kevin Kanai Griffith. So check that out if you have some time. And that pretty much does it for my news articles here. We'll probably discuss some of the more interesting ones more in depth maybe next week if Nineball wants to circle back around to any of them. But yeah, hopefully you guys are digging some of the cool stuff that's to come pretty soon or is in the game right now. And then without further ado, I'm going to hop into some of your emails here. So like I said, we're going to save many of the seasonal journey ones that Nineball kind of asked you guys to throw out there, you know, what your seasonal goals are, how you're coming along season 5 so far, because I want him to be here when we actually read them out, since it was his idea to start this in the first place. And I'm not going to do items of the week because A, we only have a few, but B, I didn't set it up or anything like that. I just kind of wanted this to be like a quick show, a fast hits, highlights, if you will. So we're just gonna keep it brief and simple and go about our day. So that said, I'm sorry if some of your emails don't get read. I did mention, I think it was in the pre-show, but if you sent in an update on your season and you kind of feel like it's outdated now because we are taking so long to get around to it, feel free to reply to that original message just to keep the thread going in our inbox, and just say like you have an update, you know maybe cleared to a higher GR, or you reset your goal because you reached like a Paragon goal or something like that. Just keep us in the loop, and we'll be happy to keep that. Circumstances of events and all that going. So let's continue on. I have an email coming in from Onklin with some show feedback. It says, "Greetings from Denmark. Dear Nineball and Leviathan, I guess it's about time I express my support to your show, as it is one of the best podcasts I've ever listened to. Even though I've been listening from back when Archon and Nineball had Leviathan visiting as just a guest, I only recently created a Twitch account to be able to give you guys a follow. Sorry. Don't feel the need to apologize for that. We appreciate anyone that stops by the live show for sure, but it's definitely not a mandatory requirement, even though it is a lot of fun. I see everyone kind of going crazy in the chat. So on we go. Time difference to Europe keeps me from catching you live, so I mostly just listen to the podcast on Thursday, or I play one of Leviathan's stored streams while I'm playing myself. It sets a good mood to the grind when no friends are on. I've never done anything but hardcore, so I appreciate how you approach the game with the balanced build, sustainability, lag monster, which so many softcore players do not understand. What I appreciate the most about you guys and the show is that you manage to have a thoughtful approach to the game's pros and cons. It's a very rare quality in this age of the internet raging and nerds, kids, complaining about everything online. Too few manage to express the nuanced opinions about the game like you guys while respecting people who disagree with you. As I'm an older guy at 38, working as a research librarian, I don't last 2 minutes on Blizzard's public forums where the trolls and kids ruin everything. Your show gives me a good feeling of staying in touch with the community while avoiding the less positive sides of the internet, so thank you. I showed your stream and some of the cooler intros to my girlfriend, who was quite surprised that other adults than me played this game, and the intros really made her laugh. I gotta get back to some of those crazy intros for sure. After listening to you a bit, she actually gave you an acknowledging nod while still being amused about grown-ups meeting on the internet to talk about their favorite game. Her experience with video games comes down to her job as a psychologist working with autistic children that often have a hard time turning their PC/console off when needed. That actually problem kind of sounds vaguely familiar at the start of a new season. I hear you. Personally, I've been playing I've played since Diablo 1, and I still return for each new season. After a month or so of new season, I start to get bored, and eventually I'll take a break. I can't quite keep up with your continued enthusiasm for the game. I did finish my season journey as a hardcore ditchwalker. That's cute. Last week, and now I'm fiddling a bit with a Wizard and Crusader, pushed up to Greater Rift 72 solo. I haven't gotten around to the grind of leveling gems to enchant my gear, as it seems a bit too boring for my liking. Playing hardcore, pushing for new personal bests in Greater Rifts, that's what I enjoy the most about the game, especially in groups where team play is key, but unfortunately that does not combine well with my lack of interest to do months of farming to make the perfect gear, so the result is often 2 to 3 dead characters before I finish the seasonal journey from pushing too hard in that mediocre gear, but man, what a ride. Just thanks a lot again for being such cool guys, and hopefully I will someday catch your live show or have a chat on, he says TeamSpeak, but now we're on Discord, so on Discord. And by the way, how about getting Archon back as a guest at some point? I really miss his humor and lack of fear from making a fool of himself in the intros. It would be nice to hear what one of the show's founders are up to. So best regards from Onklin. Nineball says, we're grown-ups? I'm doing something right. I know, I don't feel like a grown-up. Growing up is all about how you perceive yourself though, right? You don't have to grow up if you don't feel grown up. But yeah, that's thank you so much for all that love. Really appreciate that, Onklin. And I think it would be cool to get Archon back. I know that he was actually getting back into the whole like podcasting thing when Twizcast had resurfaced, and then unfortunately it's shut down again for I don't know, a little while, maybe the foreseeable future. But he might be interested, so we'll definitely reach out to him and see if we can get him to come back for an episode or two. It definitely would be fun to kind of trip down memory lane. And in fact, I think Nineball can correct me on this, but I'm pretty sure the 2-year anniversary of the show is coming up, because I know it launched very shortly after Rebirth Souls. So maybe for a reunion for 2 years. But thank you for that email. Let's see. The next one on the list that I want to tackle is a set dungeon question that was coming in from C. Harvey. And he's got a topic for discussion. The current feedback on set dungeons seems to be mostly negative. Everyone appreciates we finally have something else to do besides usual rifts and bounties, but at the same time, they're frustrated by the fact that set dungeons are tied to the stash space, which a lot of people need and want. So in other words, this means that people are simply whining about getting what they want without having to do too much, akin to having legendary items drop without having to actually play the game. I've talked to a few people about this, and there are a lot of good arguments on whether set dungeons should be nerfed or should remain as is. Even though I actually enjoyed all the set dungeons and I mastered all of them, some were easy, some were not. They're supposed to be an extra challenge on the side, so it makes sense that they should be hard. I really cannot decide which side of the argument I'm on. The fact that me and many others have completed all the set dungeons proves that everyone is more than capable of completing them, so I'm not particularly inclined to ask for the nerfs, but as customers, people still do have a right to complain, and it seems the majority is in favor of nerfing them, or at least taking them out of the stash tab / season journey requirements. It can be argued that doing this would cross the line and be asking for too much, and would just make the challenge of getting that extra stash space trivial. So it all boils down to this. Should we nerf them or should we not? Should they be required for extra stash tab to begin with? And are people asking for too much, or are they being reasonable this time around? What are your thoughts? So interesting question. Obviously, there's kind of two things at play here, and one is whether set dungeons need to be nerfed or changed, or if they're good as is. And I think you kind of hit the nail on the head when you were talking about some being easy and some not. I think there's a right level of difficulty. When difficulty feels like frustrating, but when you're still feeling like you're making progress, I think that's when it's being done well. But when difficulty feels like it's difficult for no reason, or for a bad reason, perhaps, is a better way of putting it, then that's when maybe it needs a second look. To me, it's the difference between, and I kind of brought up this comparison last time, it's the difference between the Wrath of the Waste set dungeon and the Might of the Earth set dungeon. And the difference between the two is that Might of the Earth, it's fairly difficult, but you get better at it as you try it again and again, and it still is forcing you to use the set and the skills associated with the set in a way that maybe is not the exact playstyle that you would normally do, but it kind of features all the different parts of like what makes the set tick. So I think in general, it does a really good job of exposing you to all the different like aspects of the set without being punitive in terms of how you're going through the set dungeon. You're not punished for just like random occurrences that happen. Where on the other hand, Wrath of the Waste, I feel like the whole idea of not taking any like physical damage, it doesn't tie into the set because that's just a thing that occurs in the game in general, and it's not something that the set does a job of circumventing. Like even when you're whirlwinding, I know the idea is that like whirlwind, you're moving around, so you're not potentially getting hit as much because you're mobile. But truth be told, the way that the hit mechanics work in Diablo, it's really hard to avoid attacks. So unless the set were to like give you more dodge chance or something, then that would probably make sense. Like if you got 50% dodge when you were whirlwinding, all of a sudden, yeah, dodging attacks is kind of a thing that is innately in the set. But the fact that that physical damage portion is in there and doesn't quite tie in, I feel like it's an objective that's there, but it could be a better one. So maybe there's something to be said for that. But the other side of your question, in terms of it being tied to the stash tab, that's something I think that was kind of touched on by Wyatt when he was saying that they really want the stash tab to be restricted. Like, I kind of feel like they flat out said they don't want everyone to get the stash tab when he was on the Cool Story Bro podcast. So, I mean, having it tied there and having it be a rather difficult objective to get seems to make sense for the purposes of them kind of restraining access to the stash tab. So I think they would not want to make it easier to obtain for the purposes of it rolling out. I think they actually do want it to be a little bit harder and not as widespread. Is that right? Is that the best way? I don't know. I mean, you can get it. It's definitely doable. Even if you cherry pick a lot of the easy ones, there are 8 easy set dungeons to complete. So even if that's like one of the last conquests that you feel like you need to get that stash tab, and you don't necessarily need to do the set dungeon mastery. There are ways around. I think you only need to master one up to that part of the seasonal journey. So there are ways around it. I mean, you don't have to do it just to get the stash tab. So I don't know. I think we'll definitely see something. I mean, maybe that's something to look for in the PTR as well too, right? Maybe there'll be some tweaking of the set dungeons, and we'll see. Because I think a few of them could stand to change a bit. Let's do a couple more emails here real quick. Let's check how we're doing on time. Probably do like 45 minutes or so here. So we have another email that came in from a really funny name of 69 Ball. God damn it. And then I'll read the PS first. The PS says, sorry about the name, but I just had to. So 69 Ball writes in and he says, do you think we'll ever get to see community buffs next season or at all? I'm starting to have a feeling like these just might not be a thing anymore. And Wyatt Cheng mentioned that community buffs don't really fit with their idea that any time is a good time to play D3 as opposed to whenever a community buff starts. Personally, I don't think it's a good idea to just drop the community buffs altogether because a certain number of people won't be able to log on while it happens, or that people get bored quickly. But how well do you think an account-only buff that would activate at a certain point, the best point being, in my opinion, as soon as you hit level 70, the next X number of bounty bags will give double rewards, would work? That's actually not a bad idea. I hadn't heard that one yet. So something that's just tied to your account and it's kind of activated when you choose it to be activated. Like, I guess you can't really choose, well, you can choose really when you hit level 70. It might not be at the most convenient time because let's say, for instance, you want to play hardcore the very first night of the season, right? And you get up to 70, hardcore with a lowercase h, by the way. And you get up to 70, but you know that, for whatever reason, you have to work on Saturday or Sunday or the whole weekend or whatever. You just won't have a lot of time in the future. If you could pause that buff, that might be interesting, kind of like a rested EXP system or something like they have in World of Warcraft, so that maybe it's just for a number of play hours and not real world hours that the buff is going. Could definitely be an interesting way to circumvent the idea that people might miss out on it and then feel bad about it. But I guess what it's really doing at that point is kind of shortening the journey to whatever the bonus is. So if you're saying, I want double bounty bag rewards, for 5 hours after I hit level 70, well, what you're really doing is just shortcutting the amount of time that you might do on bounties, and maybe that's okay, right? Maybe that's good, but that is kind of the side effect, is whatever you buff up, you essentially take a longer tail and you shorten it. So what might have felt good for 2 months or so, you're now kind of cramming into 1.5 months. And so even when you get to a season that's supposed to be 3 months long, now it's like, oh man, I'm so bored, halfway in. But if we didn't have that buff, you might be bored more at 2 months in because you finally reached that point that you would have reached with the accelerated progression. So it's something to consider. But I personally, I'm with you. I really like community buffs. I like what they do to invigorate me to play, because I'm the kind of person that's going to try to play every day or so. And what community buffs do for me is make me excited to really play. They do kind of take the choice out, so there is that of like, if I have the choice of hanging out with friends or taking advantage of some sweet community buff, I'm probably gonna put the friends on the lower pedestal there just for that limited time of the buff. So there is that. It does make you make some interesting life choices, but I don't know. I just like that excitement behind, oh, this is the weekend. We got to grind, grind, grind. So it's kind of the same. It kind of gives you that same feeling of when the season is about to start, right? Like you make your plans, you get your party together. In the same way, when a buff is coming up, you might do the same kind of planning and excitement for that. So there is that aspect. I hear you. Let's see. We'll do one more. So another email came in from Toro, and he had a question for us. Said, hi, WMW crew, love the show, long time listener but first time writer. Season 5 was the first season that properly sucked me into D3, and no doubt that's helped by virtually no activity in World of Warcraft where I used to spend my time. I started day 1 of the season, and right now at the 1 month in mark, I have all my classes at 70 and reasonably geared for a casual player, e.g. doing Greater Rift 40 solo, and on my main classes 45 to 50. I understand that a lot of the Diablo crowd is rather hardcore, but the future of the game is undoubtedly in accessibility and the increase of the mass appeal to the crowd with the limited time and frankly limited speaking and attention span. Oh, frankly speaking, the limited attention span. So what I'm trying to say is, while the pros, in quotes, of Diablo 3 I can't read. While the pros of Diablo think the 3-month seasons might be good enough, people like me are already done at the 1 month in mark. I'm still enjoying the game tremendously, but let's face it, there's not that much to do once you got a couple of the sets, and maybe even all of them in the case of my 1 to 2 mains, and your goal is not necessarily pushing Greater Rift 80 plus. So all the above brings me to my question. From the broader community and further game longevity standpoint, do you think that shorter seasons with more snappy, quicker to achieve journey goals would make sense, like 2 months maybe? Cheers and keep up the good work. Toro coming in from wowalt.com. So if you guys play WoW, that might be some cool website to check out. Um, this is something that I was honestly thinking about at work today, and I think I was probably sparked by reading this email in preparation for the show. But I was thinking back to season 2, and if you guys remember, we were saying that, man, that was just too short of a season, right? It was a 6-week season, or so. I think it was like 45 days or something like that. Just kind of filler in between season 1 and season 3. And by the time like people were kind of getting ramped up and stuff, it was done. But what's weird is that the game has progressed so far now to you get the gear that you need, especially with the Hadrig's gift coming as quickly as it does, and then just being able to roll things in the cube and being able to just really like kind of force your way into pieces that you need. I almost wonder if a shorter season would work now, because people, like he was mentioning, people that are getting bored at the 1 month point, imagine those people who you call them average players, casual players, whatever, but they're kind of like the people that play a little bit, but not that much. The pro players in quotes again, are the ones who are going to sink like probably double or triple the time that that person has put in at that average level. So they're already probably pushing, some of their higher GRs and things like that. And the only thing that's going to change for them really is their Paragon level, which will allow them to push, 1 to 2 to 3 to 4 greater rifts higher as they gain more of that Paragon. And maybe perfect some pieces of gear for that like 0.1% increase. So what if you take the tail off the season and you just make it like a 2 month season or a 1.5 month season, especially like considering specifically the rate of gear acquisition in the game now. The thing that's gonna matter is the lowest end, right? So we talked about the highest end, the people that play the most, and we talked about like the middle-aged people that play a decent amount but not a lot. But the people at the lowest end, it actually might not be enough time for them. And so you have to consider the whole spectrum of players. And that was kind of something that Toro was mentioning in the beginning of his email, is that the game should be kind of aimed at accessibility and getting mass appeal, which means kind of, appealing to more of the casual player, because those are the ones who are going to really, buy the game en masse and help Blizzard generate money. So that's the other side of it to consider, is that if you make the season too short, people that can only log in like 2 hours a week or something like that aren't actually going to be able to progress all that much. If you have a 6-week season, that's only 12 hours played by that person. If you have a 3 month season, then that's 24ish hours, maybe getting up to 30 hours, which seems like a decent amount of time to play. So there are considerations to be made, right? You have to find that level where it feels good for everyone involved. But it's tough to say exactly where it falls. I am curious to see kind of how things feel after this 3 month season, because it's what we've all been clamoring for since the beginning. And we'll see also how much of a break they take between season 5 and season 6. But that's the only other side of it, I think, is if you do go for a shorter, say 1.5 month season or so, what happens when there's no new patch? You can't roll out a new patch in 1.5 months every single time for an entire year. So there's going to be a lot of maybe dead time or seasons rolling out on the same patch, and I don't know if people would be okay with that. Maybe that's something to experiment with too, but it stands to be seen. I don't know if we'll actually see them ever go that short, but it would be cool, maybe like to mention a game that we usually don't like to talk about, Path of Exile. They do their race seasons and things like that, so there are multiple kind of events that happen throughout the course of a season. There might be a league, there's like a 1 week race, a 24-hour race, things like that. We were kind of talking about this last episode too, how it'd be interesting to implement something like, find as many legendaries as you can for the next 3 hours kind of thing, and tally those results up, and it contributes some points to your account, and the points add up over the course of a season, and then you can get you can win off of accumulating a certain amount of points. But now it's kind of interesting, because now it's not just tied to gear acquisition and climbing to the top of the leaderboard, but it could just be who came up with the best T10 build to farm as fast as possible, and who lucked into just that many extra legendaries, who found a method that was actually better than doing just a bunch of T10s and nobody knew. Or it could lead to some cool gameplay that isn't totally focused on just pushing to the top max level gear, max level GR, etc., etc. So yeah, I guess we'll see. We definitely have a ton more emails, so I'm sorry again that we haven't quite caught back up to everything yet. But again, I don't want the episode to go too long, and I don't want to cover too much content without Nine Ball here. So I will go ahead and close up the community section here, but I will say that if you guys have things, please don't feel afraid to send them in, because we are going to catch up as time goes on here for sure. So definitely feel free to send emails. It's westmarchworkshop@blizzpro.com. Feel free to also tweet at us at VWM I'm always reading those tweets, replying to things, retweeting things, saving things that we might show on the show as well. And there's tons of ways to reach us. Again, through the email, through Twitter. We're here on the live stream every Wednesday night. Even if one of us is dead or dying or sick or whatever have you, one of us will be here for sure. So check out twitch.tv/BlizzPro. Wednesday nights, 9 Eastern, 6 Pacific. There's also tons of other amazingly awesome shows here. There's the Payload podcast, which is our Overwatch podcast, and that's on Thursdays. There is the Well Met podcast, which is on Sundays. And there is also the... this is me screwing it up. The Heroes of the Storm podcast, Stormcast. I don't know what it's called. I'm so sorry. I'm terrible. But that happens on Tuesdays as well. So definitely check that out. From our website, you can check out all the awesome articles, guides, all sorts of cool things that our writers are constantly pumping out, and that's at diablo.blizzpro.com, and also the main site blizzpro.com for any of the other games that you might be into. Heroes Power Hour. Thank you, Nineball, in the chat. How did I forget that? I don't even know. Yes, so we have the Heroes Power Hour, and again, that's on Tuesday nights. Our in-game clan is BlizzPro, and I'm happy to announce, well, kind of happy to announce, but we're getting to that point where there's a lot of inactivity, so we're freeing up more spots. So if you've been reluctant to apply to join the clan, feel free to go ahead and jump in the game and request a spot. Right now, I've actually cleared out all the requests, so there's a bunch of pending ones out there if you just recently tried to get in. And we're still at max once all those people accept, but as again I'm mentioning, people are coming up against that inactivity deadline, so there are going to be a ton of spots really soon, so definitely feel free to hop in if you want to. Also feel free to send that introductory email like we tend to mention, because it definitely puts your name on the map and kind of bumps you up the list a little bit. If you don't want to join the in-game clan, or you have an awesome clan of your own, but you still want to hang out with us, feel free to join our in-game community, which is the Westmarch Workshop in-game. You just search in communities, it should pop up for you. A lot of people hop into there, and if they want to get some split farming going, if someone has a bandit shrine, like I was mentioning, or a bunch of puzzle rings that they just want to share with the group, or Ubers, there's just tons of stuff that's always in there, so it's pretty lucrative to hang out, and also just talking and chatting it up with everyone. Which I also want to mention, we have a Discord for that as well too, and I'm actually trying to use that a lot more, so going forward, definitely feel free to join our Discord for BlizzPro. All you have to do is type http://discord.blizzpro.com. That should give you an invite to our Discord server, and in there's a bunch of different channels for all our different podcasts and games. What I'm trying to do now is actually all the things that I talk about in the show, so like links or cool videos or whatever, I'm actually going to try and pop all those into the show, as well as the VOD, or into Discord, as well as the VOD and things like that, so you can actually check all those out. Either if you miss the show, or you miss a reference and you don't quite catch a URL or whatever, should be in there. So it's going to be a really cool like repository of kind of things past for the show. So definitely hop on that train. I'm loving Discord, and we're going to try and really get it the usage of pumped up. So how can people find us individually? And I say us even though I'm the only one here. It's just me, Leviathan, at SAStewart111, but also feel free to follow Nineball. So send him some well wishes. Let's flood his Twitter timeline with hashtag get well soon or something like that from all of us. So that's at NineballGamer. And if you want to follow my stream, you can do that too. It's twitch.tv/Leviathan111. I admit I've been slacking a little bit on it, but I will try and get better at that as time goes on. So yeah, thank you guys so much for hanging out with me here on the Westmarch Workshop. Episode 83, Leviathan swims solo. Solo's not so bad anymore though. They upped the experience, so you know. It works out every now and again. But until next Wednesday, guys, and girls, and dogs, and cats, and penguins, and whoever else is here, feel free to enjoy yourself. Get in there, try out the Kanai event, get ready for the PTR 2.4.1. So much to look forward to. And I'll be catching up to you.